Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Namo Ramana, a very warm welcome of Raman Kendra, Delhi. We shall be starting our Sunday satsang, and I would now request Narayananji to initiate the puja. Narayananji.
प्रसन्नवदनं ध्याये सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये अयमुक्तसमुत्सर्गो मन्दो न कृणन्दो गणानान्त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुस्तोत्रमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पदे आनुष्ठुनुष्ठिसाधनम् अस्मिन् दरिद्रबिम्बे महागणपतिं ध्यायामि महागणपतिम् आवाहयामि गणपतये नमः आसनं समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः अर्घ्यं समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः पाद्यं समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः आसमनीयं समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः उपसारिकस्नानं समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः शरणागमनम् आसमनीयं समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः वस्त्रदातम् अक्षदां समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः यज्ञोपवीतार्थम् अक्षदां समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः गंगां धारयामि समर्पयामि ओम महागणपतये नमः गन्धोपरियक्षतां समर्पयामि। ओम महागणपतिये नमः। गणनाथम् अक्षतां समर्पयामि। ओम महागणपतिये नमः। इत्रा कुङ्कुमं समर्पयामि। ओम महागणपतिये नमः। पुष्पैर्पूजयामि। ओम सूर्याय नमः। ओम तेजगंधाय नमः। ओम कपिलाय नमः। ओम गजगर्णकाय नमः। ओम लंबोदराय नमः। ओम विगडाय नमः। ओम विघ्नराजाय नमः। ओम विनायकाय नमः। ओम धूमकेतवे नमः। ओम गणाध्यक्षाय नमः। ओम बालचंद्राय नमः। ओम ऊर्ध्वाय नमः। ओम सिद्धविनायकरे नमः। दीपार्थं समर्पयामि। अक्षरां समर्पयामि। ओम भूर्भुवस्सुवः स्वस्तिर्भवत्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। सत्यं वदेन प्रजामि। अमृतत्वं स्वाहा। ओम प्राणाय स्वाहा। ओम अपानाय स्वाहा। ओम ज्ञानाय स्वाहा। ओम उदानाय स्वाहा। ओम समानाय स्वाहा। ओम ब्रह्मणे स्वाहा। महागणपतिये नमः। महागणपतिये नमः। गणपतिये नमः। पुरगण्डकदलिपणमिन्तीं समर्पयामि। मध्ये मध्ये पानीयं समर्पयामि। अमृतसमुद्रावसं समर्पयामि। कर्पूरं समर्पयामि। गणानां गणपतिं नमामि। कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां गणपतिये नमः। ओम समर्पयामि। नीराजनं समर्पयामि। नीराजनानन्तरमासमनीयं समर्पयामि। महागणपतिये नमः। महागणपतिये नमः। महागणपतिये नमः। वक्रतुंड महाकाय दीर्घोडिसमप्रभ गुरुमेदेव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा गणपति प्रसादं सरसा प्रणमामि। ओम भो ओम भुव ओम सुव ओम ओम जनम ओम तप ओम सत्यम ओम तत्सर्वण्यम भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। ओम ज्योतिषं ब्रह्मस्वर ओमोपात समस्त दुर्ग षट्वारासु परमेश्वर प्रीत्यर्थम शुभे शोभने मुहूर्ते आद्य ब्रह्मण द्वितीय राते श्रीवेदे वराह कल्पे वैवस्वत मन्वंतरे अष्टाविंशतितमे कलियुगे प्रथमे भागे जम्बूद्वीपे भारतवर्षे भरतखण्डे मेरो दक्षिणे पार्श्वे सगाप्ते अस्मिन् वर्तमाने व्यावावृके प्रभुवादिनां षष्ट्या संवत्सराणां मध्ये पिलवनाम संवत्सरे उत्तरायणे शिशिर ऋतु पंगुनी मासे कृष्णपक्षे युक्त्यां शुभतिथौ भानुवासरयुक्तायां त्रिकोण नक्षत्रयुक्तायां शुभनक्षत्र शुभयोग शुभकर्ण एवं गुण विशेषण विशिष्टायाम् अस्यां दशमीतिथ्यां शुभतिथौ मम जन्म पाप जन्म प्रति एतच्चन पर्यन्तं मध्ये संभाविधानं सर्वेषां भावानां सत्य अभिनवार्थम् अस्माहं सहकुर्माणं क्षेम सद्धर्य वीर्य विजय आयुरारोग्य ऐश्वर्याणाम् अभिवृद्ध्यर्थं समस्तमङ्गलाभ्यर्थं समस्तदुर्दोषशान्त्यर्थं रमणमहर्षेः प्रसादेन ज्ञानवैराग्यसिद्ध्यर्थं श्री रमणमहर्षेः पूजां करिष्ये तरङ्गं कलश पूजां च करिष्ये विघ्नेश्वरं यथास्थानं प्रतिष्ठापयामि शोभनार्थे क्षेमाय पुनरागमनाय च कलशस्य मुखे विष्णुकण्ठे रुद्रसमाधिस्थ मूले तत्र सिद्धितो ब्रह्मा मातृगणे समृद्धा कुशक्तु सागरा सर्वे सप्तद्वा वसुन्धरा ऋग्वेदो यजुर्वेदो सामवेदो अथर्वण गंगे सतनसक गोदावरी सरस्वती नर्मदे सिन्धु कावेरी जलेस्मिन् सन्निधं कुरु अङ्गे सहिता सर्वे कलशाम्बु समाधिस्था आयान्तु देवपूजार्थं दुर्दशकारगा तंबूरा सागर उत्पन्नो विष्णु करे देवे संपूजिते पांचने नमोस्तुते देवो देवालय प्रोक्त जीव देव स्नानन यामने पूजये ओम सकलमनात्म शक्ति युक्ताय योग पीडात्मने नमः आधार शक्तिये नमः मूल प्रकृतिये नमः आदिवराय नमः आदिगुरुमाय नमः आनंदाय नमः पृथ्व्यै नमः आदित्यादि नवग्रह देवताभ्यो नमः दश दिक्पालेभ्यो नमः गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः ओम अस्य श्री प्राण प्रतिष्ठा मंत्रस्य ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वर ऋषिरकिति सामधर्माणि संधांसि सकल जगत स्थिति सम्मार्गार्णी प्राण शक्ति परा देवता आम बीजम हरिम शक्ति रोम कीलकम प्राण प्रतिष्ठापने विनियोग आम अंगुष्ठाभ्यां नमः हरिंदर्जनीभ्यां नमः रोम मध्यमाभ्यां नमः आम अनादिकाभ्यां नमः हरिंगष्टिकाभ्यां नमः रोम कर्णकुष्ठाभ्यां नमः आम हृदयाय नमः हरिं शिरसे स्वाहा रोम सिंहाय वसट आम कौसायम हरिं नेत्रदाय वषट रोम अस्त्रदाय पट पूर्वस्तरोदि दिग्बंध ज्ञानम रक्तांबोधिस्त बोधोरस तरुण सोडकराब्चे वासं बोधुंदम निक्षुत्व मणिगुण पंचबाणा विप्राणस्य कपालं त्रिणेरसदापि वसोरोटिया गिरिबालार्गोना बहुसुगुरि प्राणशक्ति परान ओम आम हरिं क्रोम क्रोम हरिं माम अम यम लम लम वम सम तम अंश सोम सोम अंश अस्यामूर्तौ दीर्घदिष्टदो अस्यामूर्तौ सर्वेन्द्रियाणि वाङ्मनस्वस्वस्वत्र दिव्या प्राणवा आनिबाध आयुगुस्थानि या कस्ति स्वस्ति सुगम सुरम तिष्ठन्तु स्वाहा ओम अस्य श्री प्राणप्रतिष्ठामन्त्रस्य ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वर ऋषिरकिति सामधर्माणि संतांसि सकल जगत सृष्टि सम्मार्गाणि प्राणशक्ति परादेवता आम बीजम हरिं शक्ति रोम तिलकम प्राण प्रतिष्ठापने विनियोग आम अंगुष्ठाभ्यां नमः हरिंदर्जनीभ्यां नमः रोम मध्यमाभ्यां नमः आम अनागाभ्यां नमः हरिंगष्टिकाभ्यां नमः रोम कर्णकुष्ठाभ्यां नमः आम हृदयाय नमः हरिं शिरसे स्वाहा रोम सिंहाय वसट आम कौसायम हरिं नेत्रदाय वषट रोम अस्त्रदाय पट पूर्वस्वरोदि दिग्बंध असुलेदे पुनरस्माक्ष सक्ष पुनः प्राणवेनो दैवोगम जो पश्यन्य सूर्यमुच्चरत मनमदे वज्ञानशक्ति आवायो सद्दाविदो सन्निधो भव सन्निधो भव अवगुण्डितो भव सुब्रतो भव सुमुखो भव वरदो भव प्रसिद्ध प्रसिद्ध स्वामिन् सर्वजगन्नाथ यावत् पूजावसानकं तावत् ध्रुवं प्रतिपादनेन बिम्बेऽस्मिन् सन्निधं कुरु We start with Ramnostotra. Garmi go, Sardaman. Lord recite Ramnostotra. Matram samastam Udayam tam Ramam Gaviram Udayinam Rijitayami Om जाताय नमः ओम श्री रमणाय नमः ओम गुरवे अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः। ॐ महोदसे नमः। ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः। ॐ जगद्दितावताराय नमः। ॐ श्री भूमिनाथस्थलोत्थिताय नमः। ॐ पराशरगुरोत्तंसाय नमः। ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः। ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः। ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः। ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः। ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः। ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले प्रदिग्ध्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्तिनिवातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ देव्याय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः। ॐ इन्दुमौलिनपितृपते नमः। ॐ पितुरादेशतशोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ उदासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसम्भ्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपश्चवीरसर्वपुराय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाङ्गुलिलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ चूतवाटया समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूरिकाकिलविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणाधिकाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजसलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रसिकाचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्यनिपाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ हर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ वीर्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ दुर्मार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ सदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अनिर्जनाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ कृपाक्षये नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री शोणाचलप्रभुसंसाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेशे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेवितां सरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेश उपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्छिन्नसंशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वमनिमतस्थानामाराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः।
मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनाधगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ हृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमितर्चाण्डवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। प्राप्यते फलं कर्म किं परं कर्म तज्जडं कृतिमहोदधौ पतनकारणं फलमशाश्वतं गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं नेच्छया कृतं चित्तशोधकं मुक्तिसाधकं कायवाग्मना कार्यमुत्तमम् पूजनं जपश्चिन्तनं क्रमात् जगत ईषधीयुक्तसेवनम् अष्टमूर्तिभृत् देवपूजनम् उत्तमस्तवादुच्चमन्दतः चित्तदञ्जपध्यानमुत्तमम् आज्यधारया स्रोतसा समम् सरलचिन्तनं विरलतः परम् वेदभावनात् सोऽहमित्यसौ भावना बलात् पावनीमता भावशून्यसद्भावसुस्थितिः भावना बलात् भक्तिरुत्तमा तत्स्थले मनसस्तथा क्रिया भक्तियोगबोधश्च निश्चितम् कामयोधनान् लीयते मनः बालपक्षिवत् क्रोधसाधनम् चित्तवायवश्चित्क्रियायुताः शाखयोर्द्वयीः शक्तिमूलका लयविनाशने उभयरोधने लयगतं पुनः भवति नो मृतम् प्राणबन्धनान्नीनमानसम् एकचिन्तनान्नाशमेत्यदा नष्टमानसोत्कृष्टयोगिनः कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तितिं यतः दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मनः चित्त्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्गार्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मनः अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्मतः ऐपतत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभाजहमहं दया प्रतिहृत्स्वयं परमपूर्णसत् इदमहं पदाभिक्यमन्वहम् अहमिलीनकेऽप्यलयसत्तया विग्रहेन्द्रिय प्राणधीतमः नाहमेकसत्तज्जडं कसत् सत्त्वभासिका चित्त्ववेतरा सत्तया हि चेच्चित्तया ह्यहम् ईशजीवयोर्वेषधिभिदा सत्स्वभावतो वस्तु केवलम् वेषहानतः स्वात्मदर्शनम् ईशदर्शनम् स्वात्मरूपतः आत्मसंस्थितिः स्वात्मदर्शनम् आत्मनिर्भयादात्मनिष्ठता ज्ञानवर्जिता ज्ञानहीनचित् ज्ञानमस्ति किं ज्ञातुमन्तरम् किं स्वरूपमेत्यात्मदर्शने अव्यया भवा पूर्णचित्सुखम् बन्धमुक्त्यतीतं परं सुखम् विन्दति जीवसुदैविकः अहमपेतकं निजविभानकम् महदिदं तपो रमणवागियम्.
Namo Ramana. In continuation of our satsangs for 42 select verses from Bhagavad Gita, we shall be completing the discussion on the equivalence of the path of inquiry by Bhagavan and as mentioned in the Gita. We shall commence study of the next two shlokas of the song Celestial. These shlokas further indicate the method as well as the result of accomplishment of the practice of self-inquiry or Atma Vichara. Our speaker for today's session will be, as always, Sri Raghav Kumarji. a long-time devotee of Bhagavan and a resident near the ashram in Tiruvannamalai. Raghav ji is a devotee of Bhagavan Raman Maharishi with a background of Vedanta study under various acharyas of Rishikesh and Uttarkashi over several years. After completing a degree in technology in 1993
So
and
for
a
those
few
of
years
you
of
who
research
are
in electronics,
maybe coming here and have not attended some of the older sessions online, so just a brief introduction that we are doing Sri Ramana Maharshi's selected verses on the Bhagavad Gita.
right. So now I will request Raghav ji to continue the 42 select verses of Bhagavad Gita. Raghav ji, over to you now, please.
Okay.
So we'll start with the Shanti mantras, and since this is a live session in the Delhi Ramana Kendra, I'll just chant the Shanti mantras. You can repeat after me like we did yesterday. So, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Ishvaro Gururatmeti, Ishvaro Gururatmeti, Murti Bheda Vibhagine, Murti Bheda Vibhagine, Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya, Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya, Dakshinamurtaye Namaha, Dakshinamurtaye Namaha, Vande Shri Ramanarsheh, Vande Shri Ramanarsheh, Acharyasya Padabjam, Acharyasya Padabjam, Yo me darshayadisham, Yo me darshayadisham, Bhantam Dhvantamatitya, Bhantam Dhvantamatitya. So welcome to our study of the selected verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So as you know, Bhagavan used to say that one should always study the Bhagavad Gita. He was, although an Advaitin, nevertheless always endorsed and encouraged each of us to daily always study the Bhagavad Gita. It is such a helpful and important text, and it is something that can be embodied in our very life, in our meditation, as well as in our conduct. So it is a very versatile text which has a very transformative effect both on our meditative practice as well as how we live our life in accordance with Advaita. And Bhagavan had therefore selected these 42 beautiful verses and strung them together. And we were looking at two of the verses, verses 29 and 30, where the section which we are dealing with is actually the essence of the Who Am I self-inquiry practice. From verse 27 to 30 in these 42 verses of the selection, you have the core principles of Atma Vichara explained, and I was highlighting how the Bhagavad Gita's method and teaching of meditation is very equivalent to Bhagavan's direct path of Atma Vichara. The words are, of course, different. One is in Sanskrit, and Bhagavan has explained in a contemporary language suitable to us modern students of Advaita. But the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, Dhyana Yoga, and Sri Bhagavan's Atma Vichara, self inquiry, is the same. And so those 4 shlokas are worth bearing in mind, particularly the 2 which we saw in the last session. So it's very nice if we just chant those 2 as a way of being in touch with this beautiful teaching. I'll chant those 2 and we can repeat those 2 as well. Remember that the Gita is a vast text with some 700 odd shlokas. And there's just one chapter, the 6th chapter, which deals with meditation per se. Okay? Many other topics are there, how one leads a life of karma yoga, how one can have devotion to Ishvara. And this 6th chapter, the Dhyana Yoga chapter, is the key chapter where Sri Krishna has explained the essence of meditative practice. And so these 2 shlokas we will just chant now. Shanai Shanairuparame Buddhya Dhritigrihitaya. I will repeat again. Shanai Shanairuparame. Repeat. Shanai Shanairuparame Buddhya Dhritigrihitaya. Buddhya Dhritigrihitaya. Try that. Buddhya Dhritigrihitaya. Atma samstham manah kritva. Atma samstham manah kritva. Na kinchidapi chintayet. Na kinchidapi chintayet. Atma samstham manah kritva. Atma samstham manah kritva. Na kinchidapi chintayet. Na kinchidapi chintayet. Yato. So this is the verse where it says that Shanai Shanai Ruparamet. May we gradually draw in the mind, which is habitually going outwards, gently draw in the mind by shifting attention from the external objects. We are always thinking of external objects and various plans about the past and future. Instead, with eyes relatively closed, may one shift one's attention to the very awareness within. Shanai Shanai Ruparamet Buddhya Dhriti Grihitaya. With that intellect, with your mind, the deepest part of the mind is called the intellect, the buddhi. So with a firm buddhi. And why do you need that firmness? I explained how it is very difficult to unload the mind of its preoccupations. So the mind has all these preoccupations, and we are actually carrying a lot of external things in our mind. So gradually we have to unload that. So we'll be looking at what this unloading implies and how Bhagavan also gives us tips on this particular way of emptying the mind, so to speak, of clutter. Like that, but instead it's very alert and yet free of clutter. So Shanai Shanai Ruparamet Buddhya Dhriti Grihitaya. Then the key sentence I mentioned, Atma Samstham Manah Kritva. So we center the mind by allowing it to gently resolve into the self. So we don't think of Atma as an object. We don't objectify the self. Remember, the self is what is behind your thought of meditation. You cannot meditate on the self. You can just be the self. So that is the key difference between any other meditation, such as repeating some mantra or concentrating the mind on some form or some sound, which is all very welcome. But in Atma Samstham Manah Kritva Na Kinchidapi Chintayet, when that is said, we shift the attention to the thinker by this very powerful question, who am I? The very content of that implies I am ignoring the content of the thought and shifting my attention to the thinker, pure awareness. Remember, when the thoughts are not there, you are left with pure awareness. When there is a gap between the thoughts, there is pure awareness. Thoughts arise in consciousness, they stay in consciousness, they resolve in consciousness. So, consciousness is that underlying substratum. It is always there, and you are one with that. You are not separate. You are that consciousness. It's not like you have consciousness. So, in conventional language, we are sort of habituated to think wrongly that I have consciousness, like I have a body. That's not true. The more way of saying it is, I am consciousness. And then, yes, I have a body, I have a mind, I have hands and legs, and I have some qualifications. All that comes later. It's an add on. But what is never added on to you, what cannot be away from you ever, is that I, which is consciousness self. So you can say, I am consciousness. So when you say Atma Samstham Manah Kritva, it implies that we are just coming back to being that pure self, which we never actually do. We never actually allow that contemplation to happen, because always we have some roles to play. So throughout the day, we have some role or the other to play, which means that we are identifying with some or the other part of ourselves. I as a mother or a father or an employee, employer. All these roles are added on to consciousness. But in meditation, in Atma Vichara, who am I? We are resolving all these roles. We are allowing all these roles to be kept outside. Let them be where they are. They have their place in your life, that's fine. But in that meditation, you are letting them all be outside and just coming back to just being the thinker. And then, magic of magics, what happens? When all these thoughts which have to do with your roles are left behind outside, that very I resolves as self, which is limitless. The limitations are coming with the roles we play. I am limitless by my very nature. So that is the Upadesha of Bhagavan, which through this who am I, you are able to own up. Bhagavan has already told us that you are not in space or time, you are timeless, you are spaceless awareness. But in this practice, you are able to own it up. So what is the use of the practice? It is not to get anything new. It is to own up this truth, which is always there. It's like I have a treasure with me and I think I'm a poor man. All I have to do is own it up. I say, oh, I already have this. I already had this all the time. Even so, here I am coming back to being that pure self, which is limitless awareness, by just freeing oneself from all these roles and the thoughts they engender. And then through this very question, who am I? Which is not a question which you should answer verbally. You don't try to find a verbal answer for that. You just use that question to get away from being involved in the thoughts. Whenever the thought says, you should do this, you should do that, you use that question to not get absorbed and carried away by the thoughts. That is the idea of Atma Samstham Manah Kritva Na Kinchidapi Chintayet. Do not think of any particular object, including even the self. So don't make a concept of the self and try to start thinking about it. That too actually is okay as a form of meditation, but this self-inquiry, which is the most direct path, implies even that concept you drop. So you don't try to think of this is the self or that is the self. Instead, just leave all the thoughts aside, coming back to pure awareness and stay there. Na kinchidapi chintayet. No need to think of any particular thought specifically. So that is the verse, the key verse. And then the second one, a follow-up verse, we will also chant that. Remember, these two verses in the Gita are the essence of Bhagavan's self-inquiry. That's why we'll just chant that. So the next verse after that in the 6th chapter of the Gita, verse 26, is this. Yato nischarati, yato nischarati, manaschanchalamasthiram, manaschanchalamasthiram, tatastato niyam yaitat, tatastato niyam yaitat, atmanyeva vasham nayet, atmanyeva vasham nayet. So yato nischarati. whenever, yato, the double adverb, whenever the mind goes away, nischarati, manas chanchalamasthiram, this unsteady mind, back the mind, and atmanyeva vasham nayet, atmani, atma me. It's the seventh, case, like it is in atma, coming back to the self, vasham nayet, draw back the mind and allow it to resolve. Like the example we give of a wave, you're like a wave, and then you're resolving back into the ocean that you always were. So the wave is never separate from the ocean. Even when the wave exists, it is the ocean alone. And the wave arises from the ocean, falls back into the ocean. So in meditation, you are able to appreciate that the mind has no existence apart from the self, which is pure awareness, consciousness. And so, Atmanyeva Vashamanayet, that mind is allowed to sink in. Why do I use the word allowed rather than say we make it sink in? Because there is a certain, lack of exercise of free will in that. So suppose I go to a very beautiful location, like in the Himalayas, and then I say to someone, now appreciate the beauty of this place. It's not something he has to, force himself to do that. Come on, appreciate it. That doesn't make sense there. It is something that happens naturally. You allow yourself to appreciate the beauty of the Himalayas. Even so, contemplation here, the Atma Vichara, is something that you just create the ambience and then it has to occur. So if it's not occurring, then you work further to make the ground clearer and then give the proper incentives, so to speak, for the contemplation to happen. So beyond a point, you cannot force the mind to resolve into Atma or anything like that. Instead, Atma is always there, and the mind, once it is freed from its habitual, preoccupations, it will resolve. So that is the idea why we say that there is no active use of the free will here in this contemplation. And that's why very, in a way, very relaxing, because you're not being asked to, even chant a mantra here. Chanting a mantra is very powerful, very useful. We should do it. But there is a difference between mantra repetition and Atma Vichara. In Atma Vichara, you are just creating that ambience and allowing the mind to just slow down and resolve into its source. That is why they say free will is not involved. The Acharyas have told us this very Atma Vichara. Traditionally, they call it Nididhyasanam. There is no active use of free will. You want to sleep, supposing. What do? You create a nice, cot or bed, switch on the fan or the AC if it's very hot, and then you maybe switch off the lights and then you lie down and sleep will come. So you cannot force yourself to sleep. It's a big gift. Many of us, sometimes we don't get sleep so easily. So sleep is something that has to arrive or come upon us by itself. We create the right ambience and then sleep happens. Somewhat similarly, Atma Vichara or Nididhyasanam is something that you can prepare the ground and have all the right inputs from our Guru in the background, and then it happens. So the right inputs from the Guru which say that, look, all these objects are fleeting, they come and go. Beyond a point, they do not have any happiness in them. All happiness is coming from the self. All these things are in the background. And with this background, when you allow your mind to be free of the thoughts, then that contemplation happens where you discover a vast ocean, as it were, of bliss and happiness as being you, as being not separate from you. You don't say, I am happy. You say, I am happiness. So when you say, I am happy, it implies, okay, I am happy now, I am unhappy some other time, I am this, I am that. But I am happiness. So that is the very nature. So one of my teachers used to say, happiness is the very meaning of the word I. When you say I, that is the very meaning of the word happiness. And yet, of course, there are obstacles and we are not always able to discover and stay with that very meaning, essence of that I as happiness or joy. You can use any synonym there. So all happiness is going from within outwards and then coming back, reflecting. So this discovery comes when in Atma Vichara we see that without any object, without any thought, there is so much Ananda. There is so much Ananda Avirbhava that creates that conviction. Actually, it's also a byproduct. The experience of happiness in meditation is a byproduct. It's not that you should seek that happiness there. It happens. But that gives you the faith, the conviction that, okay, all happiness is within me. It gives us that conviction. So we keep going, we keep understanding that the Guru's words are indeed true, that I am the source of all happiness. I am the locus of all that is true. And whatever is externally happening is, yes, certain play of karma is happening, let it happen. And I adopt an attitude of surrender, go through it while evolving to arrive at what I truly am. So that's the whole path there, summarized in those two verses there, okay? So these two we have chanted now. So two additional verses today we'll try to see if we can take up to whatever extent possible. So like I said, some follow-up inputs are also there about this method. And Bhagavan himself would always emphasize that this is the most direct method. Why is it the direct method? Because every other method makes you do something or the other to maybe concentrate the mind or to come back to yourself. Whereas here you're directly looking at the self itself. In the sense, you're directly facing the truth of what you are. You're not trying to distract yourself through any other stratagem like a mantra or any such form or anything. So that is why this is the direct path, the Sakshat Marga as it's called. And Krishna too has emphasized that, like we just saw in these two verses. Then the next two verses we'll just briefly try to see that today to the extent we have time. The next verse says that that person who has started practicing this will face certain obstacles, and as he overcomes those obstacles, he will find true peace and lasting quietness within. That's the essence of this verse. I'll chant that and then we will see the meaning of that. You can chant this also since it's a direct session. Yatendriyamano buddhihi Yatendriyamano buddhihi Munirmokshaparayanah Munirmokshaparayanah Vigatecha bhayakrodhah Vigatecha bhayakrodhah Sthitadhir muniruchyate Sthitadhir muniruchyate. Once more. Yatendriyamano buddhihi Yatendriyamano buddhihi Munirmokshaparayanah Munirmokshaparayanah Vigatecha bhayakrodhah Vigatecha bhayakrodhah Sthitadhir muniruchyate Sthitadhir muniruchyate. So it says that to give the just the word meaning, and then we can see the depth that is there in that shloka. Yatendriya mano buddhihi, the one who has that sadhaka, that advanced sadhaka of Atma Vichara, who has his mind, indriyas and manaha, mind and sense organs, and buddhi. Mind, buddhi and sense organs. Manaha, buddhi, sense organs. These are the three things. Do you remember? We had a succession of realities. Indriyas are a little out of the sense organs. Then you have the mind which keeps dwelling upon the objects of the senses. Deeper part of you is called buddhi. Buddhi is the intellect, the deepest intellect, which says this is right, this is wrong, this is correct, this is not correct. Very powerful. So I always emphasize that a very key milestone or breakthrough in sadhana, whatever sadhana you do, is to understand these two parts of yourself. Okay, this is the buddhi in me, this is the manas in me. So we use the catch-all word mind, but very helpful to dwell on and try to discern the difference within your experience of buddhi and manas. So buddhi is very subtle. It's like the executive power, and manas is like the bureaucracy. The executive power makes the policies and the bureaucracy will implement it. So of course there is sometimes a back and forth there. So the buddhi, if you are able to change that, it's like changing the power center within you. Your deepest beliefs are there in the buddhi, and what you emote, what you think, what you just experience at a superficial level, all that is manas. Okay. So yatendriya mano buddhihi, one who has the sense organs and the mind and also the buddhi in control. He has mastered them to a great extent. that person, by this Atma Vichara, he has mastered them. It's not like a prerequisite, okay? By Atma Vichara, you master the mind, sense organs, and the buddhi. Yatendriya Manobuddhi, Munir Moksha Parayanaha. He is known as a Munihi. You hear of the word Munihi, no? Vasishtha Muni. You hear the word often in Indian culture. So Munihi is one who is given to Mananam. Mananam means constantly dwelling upon, to contemplation. Mananath Munihi. So that Munihi, that person who's committed to contemplation, what is meaning? What is the meaning of being committed to contemplation? It's nice to read some philosophy and show one's allegiance to various, let's say, religious moments and so on. But ultimately, you've got to put your money where your mouth is, as they say. You have to invest time and energy in what you believe in. So the Munihi is one who chooses to invest a good deal of his time and energy in contemplation, in dwelling upon himself. So that person is the Munihi. Otherwise, superficially, so many, people can perhaps say that, oh yes, this is true, or Advaita is something nice, I believe in it. But then he will be a Muni, he or she is a Muni, when he chooses to invest a significant resource of his life, his time, his energy, into this contemplation, into trying to dwell upon the words of the Guru. So it includes that as well, not just keeping the eyes closed, but also dwelling upon the teaching of the Guru. All of that engages your mind. That person is a Munihi. So that Munihi Vigate, what is that? Yatendriya Manobuddhi Munir Moksha Parayanaha. So Moksha Parayanaha means he is therefore looking at freedom as his ultimate goal. Okay, moksha is what? Freedom. You remember, I always like to highlight this idea that moksha by serious students of Advaita should be understood not as freedom from the cycle of birth and rebirth. That's a result. It's an incidental result. It's not the main thing. The main thing is, even when you're alive, even when you're engaging with the world, you have that inner freedom. You're not bound by the situation. You're not so carried away by emotions and by distress. So you are free in that very situation in life. That is moksha. Moksha, that very word means muchya, from much dhatu, from like we say in Sanskritam, muchyate. So he is freed. From that you get the word moksha. So freedom even while living, that is the idea of moksha. Not necessarily freedom from birth and so on. That's a byproduct. That happens because there is no further need for the person to take on an embodiment. He has completed his university, so to speak. He doesn't need to come back. But that's incidental. And in fact, there are many great Mahatmas who can come back as well. They have the capacity to come back to help others. So this freedom from birth and rebirth is an incidental definition. That's not the main thing. Freedom means freedom from all sorrow. Atyantika dukkha nivritti. So when you think of moksha, if you want to remember one phrase, what is the ultimate goal of, this whole Advaita, whole of Indian culture? It is Atyantika dukkha nivritti, the absolute cessation of any sorrow and distress. Okay? Body may have some problem, but the person doesn't have the problem. The mind may have some limitation, but the person feels the freedom. The Jnana Mahatma is thus free even while living in the body. That's the main goal all this is leading to. Munir Moksha Parayanaha. So that person looks upon this freedom as his goal in life. All other things that he does are he tries to sort of, converge his choices towards that. If he is doing some roles in his life, back of his mind, he'll be thinking, okay, I will slowly, converse these roles to so that I will have more time for the pursuit of moksha. I will not try to get unnecessarily involved in things that really don't matter in the end. So in this way, he makes various choices to make this pursuit of moksha his main priority in life. So that is the moksha parayanaha, one who regards moksha as the ultimate goal. So it's such an important breakthrough that, many of us maybe we even take it for granted, where we have this, vague feeling within us. We have meditated, we discover some joy. But remember, when you start looking on moksha, that freedom from all sorrow as your goal in life, not just accumulation of wealth and status and so on, they come as per your efforts, fine. But you look for something deeper. That person is moksha parayanaha. Okay, Munir moksha parayanaha. And Vigatecha Bhaya Krodha. So he has already mastered these emotions. Icha, Bhaya, Krodha. So many of these minds, emotions are so powerful, and yet through Atma Vichara, by the capacity you develop to keep aside these roles. See, what is Icha? Icha is desire for something. And when you are able to keep the entire world outside, let it be outside for now in meditation, you are able to be free from icha as well, temporarily, no doubt. So, vigatecha bhayakrodha, being free from binding desires, icha and bhaya, fear, few sessions. Whenever there is a desire and that desire is frustrated, that is called anger. All anger is frustrated desire. Kama is desire. Kama, when it is frustrated, meaning not fulfilled and it remains unfulfilled for a long time, it becomes krodha, anger. So that person is so free inside, he is able to push aside temporarily all these objects and come back to just being a simple conscious person. You know, as a simple conscious person, you are already free from anger. You don't have to become free from it. Just think about it. When anger comes, if you are at least 1% able to observe, oh my God, I'm getting angry, there you have it. So a part of you is able to observe that anger. Maybe it doesn't immediately get that freedom from the anger, but a part of you is free from anger even as it arises. So in meditation, you come back to that part of yourself. That is the real you, which is already free from anger, but you're just highlighting that you, which is free from any of these distressing emotions. And all these emotions, like I said, have to do with the roles you play. So when you set aside those roles, come back to yourself, you are free from anger. So vigatecha bhaya krodha. And I'd also pointed out how, you know, even this idea of having a devotion to one's guru is doing the same thing. Even though it's not Atma Vichara, still think about what the guru evokes in you. So you look at the picture of your guru. You don't have any anger, you don't have any krodha. In fact, the guru doesn't look at you as somebody who is rich or somebody who is poor, somebody who is well qualified, someone who has status, nothing. That's the beauty of the guru in one's life. That the guru sees you as you are, the truest part of you. That is evoked by the guru tattva, which is why meditation on the guru also is very good as a preparatory practice to Atma Vichara, because you are actually evoking that pure I, which is free of all desire, all krodha, all, you know, distress when you think of the guru or when you relate to the guru. All religious, you know, relating is also of the same kind, guru or Ishvara. So that's why it's so helpful, because you're already being trained to come to that part of you which is free of all limitations. And then you will be told, now the guru is within you. He's not in front of you, but now shift your attention to the guru within. So the guru vanishes outside of you, and then you find, the Atma is already that always, which is free from all negative emotions, all distress, all limitations. So that two-step process is usually followed. Initially, the guru outside evokes that I which is free from any limitation. Then the guru vanishes, as it were. Okay, in other words, he takes residence within your heart, and then you discover that very I is the locus of all freedom and all love and all, you know, equanimity. So that's the two-step process. But so to come back to this Atma Vichara, in this way, that Munihi is Vigatecha Bhayak Krodaha, free from all these emotions and their, you know, undulations. And Vigatecha Bhayak Sitadihi Muniruchate. Sitadihi means who has a very firm, steady intellect. That person is called the Munihi. That is the import of that particular shloka. So the thing I want you to see how is that in a practical way. So when you actually meditate, Krishna actually gives a hint in the shloka, also interesting, kind of ties in with the shloka. He says that the initial part of your meditation, before you sort of delve deeper into Atma Vichara, you can spend just a little time, you know, unloading your mind of whatever it is carrying within you. You could do this in two ways. Just stay with the self, allow the thoughts to keep coming, and then say, come back to the I, the thinker. But now, let us say the thoughts are very powerful. They just don't leave you alone. They just take you away from yourself. You keep thinking of someone you had some argument with, or someone who's creating some distress, or maybe you did something wrong, you feel some guilt. Either way, if the content is very powerful, then Krishna gives you one more tip there, saying, Sparshan kritva bahirbahyan. So, in other words, whatever objects are external to you, leave them there. So he says, don't have to do anything. Just recognize that whatever you're thinking of and whatever is completely absorbing your attention is external to you. Sparshan means the objects which are born of contact with the senses. Sparshan kritva bahihi, outer, outside, bahyan, these outer objects. So it's a tautology. What's a tautology? He says, keep external objects outside. It must be very easy, right? But it's not. It's not. I can keep this book, it's in front of me, it's outside of me. I leave it outside. I close my eyes. The book is not there inside me, right? Yep, easy enough. But now, if we try to do that with those whom we are deeply connected with, not easy that. We are actually carrying them unnecessarily inside. We think that is a way of showing care for them. That's not true. You show care for them by keeping them outside and then doing what you can for them. But we wrongly think that I have to carry them inside. Or even if we don't think like that, we carry them inside, the significant few in your life. So Krishna says, spend some time unloading the mind of those people whom you are carrying inside. How do you do that? Just recognize that they have their own minds, they have their own bodies, their own laws of nature which are governing them. I cannot control them. I cannot change everything about them. Just as much as I cannot change the fact that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. If I start saying, no, the sun should just rise a little more to this side, little more to that side, it's not going to do that. It has its own laws of astronomy, of celestial movement. If I say the monsoon should come on this particular date because I have some travel plan, it should be good. It's not going to happen. It has its own laws which govern when the seasons come and go. The same holds good for even those closest people in our life whom we are carrying deep inside. And as long as they are inside, the Atma Vichara will be a little tough. So which is why Krishna says, use some time in Atma Vichara to unload the mind. Keep them outside by recognizing. So let's say a particular person comes to your mind, recognize that Ishvara, the cosmic intelligence, has created them this way. I keep them outside. Say as much in so many words if necessary. I keep them outside. I pray for them. I bless them. I pray for them. I keep them outside. So, you know, it is said that the word Namaha, most popular mantra, it comes in all the mantras, Namaha, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namaha Krishnaya, etc. That word Namaha, one of the meanings is that I salute things as they are, leaving them as they are. I, deposit them in Ishvara. I don't carry them in within my mind. Instead, I leave them in Ishvara. Ishvara meaning the cosmic intelligence has made them the way they are with all their warts and all. And I don't carry them inside, because if I carry them inside, then I cannot go deeper. It's like I'm carrying a huge burden. I cannot travel with that. The moment I recognize the cosmic intelligence has made them what they are, I keep them outside, then they remain outside. So the important preparatory step to Atma Vichara is this: keeping external things outside. Keeping external things outside implies, especially the closest people in our life, you keep them outside and you can have all the love and care. It doesn't mean you don't care for them. That's actually the more effective way of showing love and care for them. Keep them outside and do what you can. If we load them inside, then we start getting jittery and we start getting frustrated. We start feeling helpless. Why are they this way? Why can't they be different? Why can't they be different? Our whole energy gets sucked up by that. So we have not done sparshan kritva bahirbahyan. So we should do that. Keep them external, then you can do what you can constructively. So even in meditation, therefore, first steps, whomever comes to your mind, tell yourself, Ishvara, the cosmic intelligence, has made them the way they are. I keep them outside. I pray for them. Now I come back to the self. I am free from the roles with respect to them during meditation. So in this way, you try to first prepare the ground, freeing the mind from its conventional preoccupations. So it's very important. It's like an unwinding. So spend a little time. If necessary, you can even preempt it. So think of the significant few in your life and say, I pray for them. I didn't make them the way they are. I didn't make them the way they are. There are laws of the universe which has made them the way they are. And I choose to keep them outside even while I retain the care for them within me. That's okay. The care for them is fine, but I don't load them inside. So Krishna says that there are some things which are actually supposed to be outside, but we are carrying them inside. Actually, not Krishna. Sri Shankara says in the commentary to that verse that we actually carry them inside. So we need to keep them external. That prepares the ground beautifully. Then Atma Vichara is so much more effective. Okay. So this is the one of the key steps. If we have more time, maybe we will look at it in the next session. Or how much time? Yeah. So I think another few minutes. If there are any question and answer, I will take them. Or I can answer one or two which I had from one of the older sessions. Yeah. How many? Yeah, another. Yeah, okay. So one of my teachers used to say that, it's easy to keep objects outside, but you ask a daughter-in-law to keep the mother-in-law outside, it's very difficult. Or vice versa. You ask the mother-in-law to keep the daughter-in-law outside, no way, it's not easy. Not easy at all. So that's where the challenge lies. If we accomplish that, 50% Atma Vichara success. So because you have laid the platform so beautifully, and then mind immediately can go deeper. So it's very challenging there. And we do that, like I said, recognizing that, I have not created them. I think I'm their creator. I think I'm responsible for everything they do. And so I recognize, I accept. There is a cosmic intelligence which makes them where they are. Yes, I can protect myself, that's fine, but I keep them outside. That's the main thing. And once one does that, in technical terms, we come to what is known as the Shuddha Sakshi, the pure witness. So you are actually already one with that pure awareness there. So this unloading itself is very effective. It completely relaxes you. And for those who may find that, okay, I've given you, like the exact nitty-gritty of what's happening. But intuitively, you can do the same thing if you have love for your guru. Same thing happens, like I explained. Because the guru is invoking or evoking that pure I in you without any roles, without, other roles make you feel limited, evoke something which is small in you. If you think of, let's say, a boss who was not exactly kind to you, yeah, he doesn't exactly evoke something very limitless in you, surely. But the guru is not like that. The guru says you are not limited. If you go and tell the guru, no, Guruji, I feel I have so many problems in my life, my mind is behaving like this. He says, you're not your mind. I see something deeper. That is the truth about you. So Ramana Maharshi would say that I never see anyone as having any ignorance. I don't see anyone who is not having self-knowledge. I see everybody as perfect beings. So that when the genuine vision of the Guru is like that, it evokes that part of us, which is why it's very relaxing to be in the presence of someone who sees you as you are. They don't relate to you in terms of any other external qualification, money, status, nothing. They don't care for that. So that's very relaxing, actually. One of my own experiences when I was first associated with the Ramakrishna mission too was that, oh, this is a place where nobody really cares about anything that you have done in your life or achieved or not achieved. That's also a relief, because those who have achieved a lot in their life, there's also the pressure of, continued performance. You have to live up to what you have achieved. You have to live up to your reputation. So here, even that is of no consequence in this dimension of pure awareness, where the Guru and you're relating to the Guru, or you're doing Atma Vichara. Both these contexts. So both Bhakti as well as Jnana evoke the same beautiful innermost part of you. And that's why it's very relaxing. Okay? So this is the basic, crux of the preparation for Atma Vichara, and some part of what is in Atma Vichara also we saw. Next class, we will see something more about the very nature of the I, where you stay with that. So what we saw, remember, is like the preparation plus like 50% of Atma Vichara is that itself, being the pure I. Then we will see something about what are possible deeper obstacles. Why is it that sometimes the mind plunges into meditation? After that, it doesn't stay there. After that, I seem to come back to my usual, limited self. So those are the obstacles, and we will look into some of that. Yes, Anurag, that's fine. Okay. So today we will end this session here, and thank you. It was a delight being here with you all personally. Namaste. Yes, please. Yes. Is there any? Can you complete the sentence? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So I will repeat his question for those who are unable to hear that. He asked, are there stages in Atma Vichara? Presumably, in the, let's say, earlier stages, you are still aware of certain objects, etc., in a neutral way, perhaps, of external sounds and, maybe objects and sights and so on. And is it like as we go deeper, the deeper states of experienced by the rishis and by the great Mahatmas of the past of Advaita, where they don't even have any awareness of external objects and any sights and sounds and so on, is that also a stage, etc.? Is that the question? Yeah. Okay, the two things here is, one is that what is the goal of this Atma Vichara? You should always bear it in mind. The goal of this Atma Vichara is Atma Jnanam. Jnana means self-knowledge. And it's not knowledge as in just verbal knowledge, but embodied knowledge. Means it becomes part of you. It's not separate from you. So therefore, in this, the seeing or not seeing of objects actually is secondary. Which is why you can reach that self-knowledge. Some people at least can reach that self-knowledge even if they are able to see some objects in the meditation. The mere awareness of the objects doesn't create the obstacle. So let's say a person goes to the Himalayas. Let's say, okay, he's sitting on this mountain. There are no people around. Why no people? Because people evoke the smallness sometimes. That's why people like to go be in solitude. Understandable. Now let's assume he goes there. Then you're seeing this vast panorama of mountains in front of you. And then you can just be there. And if he has some background of self-inquiry, that is also extremely, helpful as a sadhana, where there is a certain quietness of the mind and then it resolves. So in other words, the object was there in front. He was keeping his eyes open. He didn't even close his eyes, but still the mind has resolved. So you can think of it like this. Existence of objects is not creating the problem. That we carry the objects within and identify with them is the problem. Which is why, as Atma Vichara progresses, a person can, Bhagavan would assure, you can lead the normal, important, necessary roles in one's life. They can be, continued, which are the minimum roles, no doubt, but they can be continued. They are not opposed to Atma Vichara, Bhagavan would say. So, first we have to remember that it's not necessary that all the objects should vanish in one mass of light. Such an imagination is not required. Having said that, it is true that if the mind becomes extremely subtle, sukshma, and totally absorbed in the self, the awareness of the objects will go away, which is true. But that is incidental. It's not extremely important that that happens. So, which is why if you are, I'll just give you a small cue here. It's a big topic, but there are actually 3 such stages in the finished or higher stages of Atma Vichara, where it is said that the person first attains what is called Sattvapatti, means oneness with the truth of the self. Then second stage, even objects are not there. And third stage, even he doesn't even come back to identifying with the body. Like these stages are described, but we don't need. Bhagavan says all the 3 are Jivan Mukti. In other words, even if a person has total oneness, sahaja, spontaneous, awareness of the self as all that exists, that's enough. The objects don't have to vanish. But certain munis, as you said, have got so absorbed in that samadhi or absorbed in that practice, that yes, indeed, their mind completely disregards the external world and they are lost purely with that atma, which is true, but that's not essential. Jivan mukti is even with the objects there is no identification with any of them. That is itself Jivan mukti. Yeah.
Bhagavan has often said that this practice can carry on for lifetimes.
Yeah.
Now, if it has to carry on for lifetimes, then we would require some milestones or encouragement.
Right.
Either indirectly or vicariously or maybe some dream or something. Bhagavan has never indicated that there is need for encouragement.
Right.
How do you reconcile those?
Sure. Okay, so the question is that this path of Atma Vichara and arriving at self-realization is something that can go on for several lives. And how do we know, get encouraged? Because do we see some milestones or some feeling that, okay, I've gotten somewhere in my journey to keep us going and encouraged? If I don't see any signs, like they say in the Bible, look not for a sign. But anyway, the question is, maybe there is a sign somewhere of progress or of having attained something, like a dream perhaps, or the Guru comes in a dream or blesses us or gives some indication. Are there any such signs, or Bhagavan doesn't even mention or sort of encourage any such signs, looking for signs? So how do we reconcile with that? So although it's true that such dramatic signs may not be there, the acharyas of Advaita have indeed said that while you need not make some kind of assessment in the form of I have attained this or I have not attained this, because both are a form of ego, they will say like that. To say that, oh, I have progressed so much and I have not progressed so much, both are either a positive ego or a negative kind of an ego identification. So they haven't encouraged that much. Having said that, there is still one very helpful, if you like, self-evaluation method. Okay, it's not to get an ego that yes, I have done this, or to get a despair that I have not gotten anywhere, but a self-evaluation method, which one of my teachers used to call the FIR method. Okay, you like an FIR is a first information report in a police station, right? So you do this FIR on yourself. So F stands for frequency of you getting too distressed and too getting into these negative moods, if you like. So you can have your own yardstick there. F is the frequency of getting caught up in anything that you consider as moving away from Advaita, moving away from what you are convinced about. Frequency of, let's call it bad mood, if you like. The frequency becomes less as time passes. So earlier it was like, let's say once a month or once in a couple of months. Now it's much less. So things that disturb you are much less. The frequency of these excursions away from the self, excursions into distress and panic and anger is much less. Frequency, F. Then intensity. Okay, frequency is one thing, but maybe it's a little frequent, but not very intense. Earlier, I was completely swept off my feet by certain of these situations and emotions. Now I'm not so much swept off my feet. It's a little less intense, these emotional, disturbances. Intensity is less. Then recovery. So even if I do get caught up and I'm a little swept off, still I quickly come back to my equilibrium. So the recovery is much faster. So if you find that FIR are better, then you can say, compared to how I was like 10 years back, yes, I am better now. You can certainly say that. It's an objective way of self-evaluation. That's the best sign, the FIR method of self-evaluation.
Intensity could also mean that your intensity of devotion.
Sure. Sure. It's like converse of that. So as the intensity of the negative emotion reduces, the intensity of the positive devotion to the Guru or devotion to what is true, that increases. Sure. Yeah. So that's one useful self-evaluation method. Okay. So we will end today. Thank you all for participating. Om Namah Shivaya. We will end with the Shanti Mantra. This also you can chant with me for today. Om Purnamada Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ Yeah, so we'll chant 14 shlokas from the Aksharamanamala verses interspersed with Arunachala Shiva chant. You can join in with that.
तरुणारुणमणि किरणावलिनिगत्तरुमाक्षरमणमहिमालै திருநாடிய திரு அடியார் திருமலர் எளிய பரபுதல் பொருளாக கருணாகர முனி ரமணாரியனுவ கையினால் சொல்லியது கதியாக அருணாச்சலமென அகமே அறிவோடு ஆழ்வார் சிவனுலகாழ்வாரே அருணாச்சலவரக்கேற்ற அக்ஷரமணமாலை சாற்ற கருணாகர கணபதியே கரமருளி காப்பாயே அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பார் அருணாச்சலா அழகு சுந்தரம் போலகமும் நீயும் அபின்னமாயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल உன்னையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுள்ளத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா ஓர் சோற்றுளம் விடாதுனை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல என்னை அழித்தே போதெனை கலவாவிடு இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சலா ஏனிந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறரிழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல ஐம்புறத்தொழுவர் அகத்தினில் புகும் போதகத்தில் நீங்கிலையோ அருணாச்சலா ஒருவனம் உன்னை ஒளித்தேவர் வருவார் உன் சூரே இது அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல ஓங்கார பொருள் ஒப்புயர்வில்லோய் முனையார் அறிவார் அருணாச்சலா ஔவை போல் எனக்குன் அருளை தந்தெனை ஆளுவதும் கடன் அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி
भगवदेवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात् सत्यं दर्शनं पश्यामि गोष्ठं स्वाहा प्राणाय स्वाहा अपानाय स्वाहा ज्ञानाय स्वाहा उदानाय स्वाहा समानाय स्वाहा ब्रह्मणे स्वाहा नमो भगवते श्री अरुणाचल शरणाय नमः नमो भगवते श्री अरुणाचल शरणाय नमः नमो भगवते श्री अरुणाचल शरणाय नमः नमो भगवते श्री शिवपार्वतीये नमः भगवती शिशु पार्वती भगवती शिशु पार्वती नमः प्रवण्यं कदलीफलगोसीरं नैवेद्यं समर्पयामि मध्ये मध्ये पानीयं समर्पयामि भगवतं रुद्रावसं समर्पयामि नीराजनं समर्पयामि नीराजनानन्तरम् आसमनीयं समर्पयामि योगीवरसमायुक्तं नागरिकचरयुतं कर्पूरसंयुक्तं गदिविदां कर्पूरनीराजनं श्रीरमणवर्षिकी समर्पयामि यावत् आरती आदेश ओम नमो भगवते श्री अरुणाचल श्री रमणाय नमः ओम नमो भगवते श्री अरुणाचल श्री रमणाय नमः ओम नमो भगवते श्री अरुणाचल श्री रमणाय नमः सोमो वा यदस्य राजमादस्ते सो राजा संराजो वा सोमेने जले एव स्वामेनानि अभिषि भवन्ति एतावन्तो वै देवानां स्वाहा स एवास्मै स्वान् प्रयच्छन्ति स एनं पुनस्तवन्ते राजाय देवसराजा भवति ततस्तरूयो पादयन्तकारकं देवाविष्णुर्वादि पुरोगमित्रे तमेवादि मन्वादिरकं तस्य वाता कर्ममिदं विवादि कर्पूरैराजं श्रीरमणमर्जितं कर्पूरनन्दं श्रीकार्तिकमुल्लावलिने कर्पूरनन्दं मन्त्रिपालुं समर्पयामि पुष्पं वेद पुष्पवान् प्रजावान् पद्मान् भवति चन्द्रमा वावान् पुष्पं पुष्पं पुष्पवान् प्रजावान् पद्मान् भवति ॐ तद्ब्रह्मा ॐ तद्वायु ॐ तदात्मा ॐ तत्सत्यम् ॐ तत्सर्वम् ॐ तत्पुनर्नमः अन्तर्जगदेशभुवायां विश्वमूर्तिषु त्वं यज्ञस्तं वसत्कारस्तं विग्रहस्तं विष्णुत्वं ब्रह्मत्वं प्रजापति ॐ तदापो ज्योतिरुपमतोमनुस्रवम् नकर्मणां प्रदयादरे नित्यालयके अमृतत्वानसु परेणां नीतं भुवायं विप्राजते दत्यदयो विसन्धि वेदान्त विज्ञानसे विद्यदाता संन्यास योगादयतुत्तसत्त्वा ते ब्रह्मलोके तु पराणकाले परामृतात्मरिमुच्यन्ति सर्वे कारं विमानं वरणे गं यत्कुण्डली पुरवत्य सकं सदं तत्रावित्तकरमत्करं दिशोगत् तस्मिन्यदन्तत् विदवादित्यं यो वेदान्तौ स्वर लोकुतो वेदान्ते प्रतिष्ठितः तस्य प्रकृतिलीनस्य परसमहेश्वरः मन्त्रपुष्पं समर्पयामि आदिनायक पावन जन्मा पितामह आदिनायक परिस्थिति
Namo Ramana. This brings us to the closure of today's satsang. We shall reconvene in April with Mr. Michael James' session. Namo Ramana.